Well, yes, of course we have a choice. We have free will.
Oh, do we?
We do.
That's not what I've heard.
Well, you're not a Puritan, are you?
Probably not. I think
Probably not. So
if I am, I'm a failed Puritan.
you have fallen. I think they all fell. That was the problem.
Here we go. Nope. Check that. That was not a here we go.
Take two.
Take two. Greetings, friends. You have joined us for the Long in the Boot podcast, the podcast coming to you from the heel of the boot of Southwest Louisiana. I am your host, G. Long, sitting across the way, the lovely Deb.
Hello, all.
Hello, Deb.
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, much better.
Okay, yeah, been sick a little bit. Anyway, hey, if you'd like to reach the Long in the Boot podcast, we are always willing to take criticism, notes, suggestions.
Why do you jump to that first like you want people to?
I don't know.
I don't get that.
Anyway, it's
be positive.
Okay, well, positive criticism. And
you can just say hello and be,
hello.
Yeah.
The email address is longintheboot@gmail.com. The website, longintheboot.com. And the phone number, 337-502-9011. I have now remembered that for many podcasts in a row.
Wow. It's not written down. I know. I
don't have it written
I'm looking
down.
for your little pad.
I don't have it. I got rid of took the training wheels off.
Look at the big brain on
Yeah,
G
buddy.
Long.
Well, yeah. So big, it's coming out my ears.
Oh, and your mouth. Okay.
Anyway, so what's been happening with you?
Yeah, I'm in a down cycle, I would say. You know why? Because it's wintertime and I am a hibernator, and this is always when we get sick,
Yeah.
This is back injury, check.
Arthritis, check.
Flu, arthritis, check. So,
Yeah,
you know what?
Double check.
The sun will shine again. Spring will come.
It will.
It will. So, I have that mindset always.
Yeah.
When you're in a down cycle, it will get better.
We can all agree that when it's really cold, it sucks.
And we're Southern people. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't cotton to that.
We don't cotton to that. That sounds racist somehow.
Everybody has cotton in their house. I can't say that the resource
fabric.
I can't say that the resource is in itself.
Oh, I think it is
sentient, and
I think it is
has judgments and opinions. Although
cotton does have balls.
Wow! I can't believe we had to get here for that.
And that's the show. Thanks for listening, folks.
All right. So, that stuff, and then life, of course, because we still go to work. Yeah, we go to work mostly. And
well, I can at least deal with the cold a little better knowing that my progeny, my son, is currently in Alaska.
Yeah, seeing those pictures really sets you straight.
You know something, folks? Alaska is lousy with mooses.
Yes, there are. And they look aggressive. And he said, I couldn't get a closer shot. I was like, I didn't want you to get a closer shot.
Don't get closer. They are huge.
They are huge. And if there were big...
And they look pissy.
Large groups of them, I would be a little nervous
I didn't see a
that.
squirrel with any of them, though, which is weird. I've always associated a moose with a squirrel. And,
That's because of your years, dear. That's showing your age.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Anyway, so
for you young people, there used to be a show called the Rocky and Bullwinkle Show, and there was a moose.
I'm sure. Do you think Nickelodeon still shows it somewhere out in the ether? It's being shown.
I'm sure it is, but I don't think a lot of people would even understand it because there were so many references that were current at that time.
Okay.
I think it's probably
Well,
not going to.
why don't you return to the current then?
Anyway, so anything else going on in the area?
In the area, we did have a little strangeness. Nothing ever happens out here. I mean, fire things and things like that.
Right.
Nature things, but
Sure.
human things, it's pretty quiet. That's why we live in the country.
That's why I live off the road. And
I'm just the kind of person, if somebody's coming up my driveway and they didn't call me or text me, I'm curious.
getting a gun.
And getting a little suspicious. Well, so the dogs and I were outside, and usually I have one, but not both. And one's on a leash and one is not. Bella is a leashed dog, and because I can't trust her, and she's fast. And Otto, of course, being his little dachshund body self, is short, and I can catch him mostly. So when somebody pulled up and pulled all the way up, like to where we park, and an old kind of POS.
Wait a minute. They had the audacity to drive all the way up the driveway? Oh, my God.
Yes, it's a long driveway. And pull right up to where I was. Like, they passed my driveway. They looked up. They saw that I was outside. They backed up and then came up my driveway. So now I know they had no real intention of actually coming to my house.
Nothing good can come of this.
So a tall white man with no teeth begins talking to me while both of the dogs are barking. Otto is going crazy. Bella is trying to get out of my arms, and I can't understand a damn thing he's saying. But he has a menu in his hand.
I have a question. What kind of car were they driving?
It was a POS. It was like a Dodge Caravan or something. I don't know.
But the model was POS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You know.
Oh, I do.
I don't know, 2005.
Not a pedo van. Pedo vans don't have windows in the back.
No, I was very clear on that when you said that to the officer. This ultimately it ended in an officer call.
Here's my reasoning.
And what a nice officer.
Oh, couldn't get better.
All right. We'll get there. So he's got a laminated menu in his hand. I don't have my glasses on, but it looks like a barbecue menu. You know, the colors, the bright reds and browns, and I think I see a giant B at the top of the menu. And they've got a vinyl sign on the back of one of the windows. One, not both. I don't think it was on both sides. And so I didn't know how to get out of it. So I said, I'm sick. I've been really sick. And I started coughing and I backed up. And he backed up and got in his van and left.
Man.
So.
Because he was unmasked.
He was unmasked. That's how I knew he had no teeth.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
But I don't understand if you're trying to sell lunches out of your van.
Or whatever he was selling.
Was selling. No, I'm not 100% on what he had on that laminated menu. But why was he the spokesperson? It should have been the woman in the car. Perhaps she had a better
maybe she had
way of communicating.
Fewer teeth.
Well, no, he had none. He had them out.
The point is, he came up our driveway.
Got out, tried
accosted you.
Yes, spoke at me while my dog
talked at you. How dare he? And
I got out of it using COVID.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you, COVID. You gave me something.
I was at home.
You were concerned. Yeah, you came out. You knew nothing about it.
Of the house.
I didn't know how you didn't hear the ruckus.
I didn't hear the ruckus because I had my headphones on probably. But anyway, when I walked out the door, I saw the van driving down the road, a dead end road.
End road.
I'm assuming to go and try to sell
to other residents, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah.
You're going to knock on doors and try to sell lunches.
Sure. And what it was, the business was called Cannibal Cuts. Is it? It's serving the best in long pig.
Secrets in the meat.
But anyway, first of all, kudos to anybody who's got the guts to go up people's driveways.
I don't understand how many you could possibly sell, because I would think most people would have a similar response to me. What are you doing here? Why are you in my driveway? Get away.
And why are you trying to sell me food out the back
out of your van, out of your POS van.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a nice business.
But the way I look at it is what a perfect cover for just driving up people's driveways to see what's out
we jump
worth
immediately
stealing.
to the paranoia.
Of course.
Yeah.
Are we not Americans? We're paranoid, okay?
Well, no, you went down the road to take the trash, and you talked to
they never came back out.
Not that we saw.
And talked to the mail person and found out that these people have been driving around all over the place attempting to sell their cannibal cuts.
You would have to cut your losses and get out, because it couldn't be a good profit. You're burning gas. You're burning gas, so that's costing you money. If you
Right.
actually have food, you've got food costs.
And I've seen where people have suggested that they were selling like steaks and stuff.
No,
Well,
that's
again-
usually a truck with a freezer in the back.
Yeah,
I've experienced.
And I don't do that either.
I don't do that either. No, but I'm not as paranoid about them. Anyway, so
Look,
you
I've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I know the secret's in the meat. I'm not buying food
out of a truck.
that
Or a
comes to
van.
me. Now, if it's a food truck on the side of the road, I suppose it could still be Cannibal Cuts.
But you're more willing.
But I'm more willing to give it the shot.
You have a
because,
trust level there.
Well, they've got a website. They've got
Okay.
a Facebook
All right.
page.
So
So anyway,
that's your rabbit hole.
and if somebody comes down my driveway and steals something and they're driving a white van, then we know it was
You wanted to
in
have
fact,
reported
a
it,
ruse.
and that
So I went ahead and-
other people in the neighborhood.
So I went ahead and called the sheriff's department
And it turned out
filed a report
it was a pleasant encounter.
It was a pleasant encounter
A former student,
with a former student,
as so often happens.
who is just a wonderful person.
Yes, he is. He is a wonderful person.
A great officer, a good example of the Beauregard Parish Sheriff's Department.
There you go.
Couldn't say more.
Always.
And I don't want to say more because, I don't want to say
Not
names. I don't want to say
suspicious.
names, though.
Well, of course.
I don't have
Anyway, he knows who he is.
He knows who he is.
So we've reported it like good little citizens. See something, say something.
That's right.
We're going to the dark side. All right. So
And if I see you littering, I'm turning you in.
consequently,
That's it for everybody.
at things like that, as they do, before we started working in here today, I locked the back door. I locked the doors
There you go.
because I can't hear if somebody comes in. I know the dogs would most likely hear because they hear everything and let us know something was up, but I don't want to be startled.
Yes.
Yes.
Being startled is terrible.
So that's the result of odd encounters with humans when you live in the country. Odd encounters with animals, yes, that happens
All right.
a lot.
Well, enough about that. So what are we talking about today? Well, we got into this topic because of everything that's going on actually right now
And
with COVID.
it's coming into
And
the language a lot.
We came back to it, and that is the idea of the tipping point.
Yes.
A book that was made famous several years ago, actually.
Oh, like 2000.
Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
while, but I tell you what, it made a name for the guy. The guy has his own podcast
Oh,
now.
yeah. And people still use it for business and marketing.
Right. And it's Malcolm Gladwell wrote The Tipping Point, How Small Events Can Have Big Effects,
Yes.
or something along those lines. Anyway, but the idea of the tipping point, it's not new.
Oh, certainly not. Certainly not.
And-
As everything in society is some
Right.
kind of melding of other things.
But what made The Tipping Point interesting as a book was it did point out some things that it made you think about things in a different way. That reaching a tipping point is often very much, as Malcolm Gladwell put it, very much like a virus, the way it
Yes.
spreads.
Yes, and I think we talked about that when we did the episode about memes that spread like viruses because
Right.
they cause change,
Sure.
just like a tipping point causes
And then-
unstoppable change.
And then we started thinking about tipping points in history and those moments where big changes came because of what could have been a minor incident. And then things just ballooned out of control. And so we're going to talk about the past, a couple of examples of tipping points in the past. I'd like to talk about, though, also tipping points and how can you recognize tipping points?
Oh,
We'll
so
get
that
to
you can and that's the idea, is that you're better informed, so you have a better understanding of things, you make better decisions.
Well, invariably, all tipping points, at least as far as I know, when you go to look them up, they're being looked at from the now to the past. Very rarely you can have people say, hey, this is going to be a tipping point, but you don't really know.
Yeah.
There's no way to know. My question is, can you know you're in a tipping point moment?
Oh, recognize that it's
Can you
happening.
recognize
sure.
that it's
Actually, I
happening?
think now more than ever, because things are changing so rapidly. We have so many things that seem to hit that point of critical mass. I mean, that's the
But remember, it has to have great change, whatever that point is.
so it explains how ideas spread like epidemics, and which few elements need to come together to help an idea reach the point of critical mass where its viral effect becomes unstoppable.
Right.
You can't go back. So it's a gravity point, right? We all know where the fulcrum is, and you're on balance, and balance is key to everything. So it's at a point where things get out of balance.
Yeah. And so I guess we'll start this by, as we always do, by going to the past.
Well, sure.
And there are so many tipping points in the past that are available to anybody who bothers to look at it. But I found two that I really think are interesting.
Okay.
And it's because I think the tipping points are often, I think they're mistaken. I think that the tipping point that is often identified for this particular incident actually happened much sooner than they realize.
Oh, okay.
But the first one is, and for you folks who don't like history, well, sorry, but we're going back to England to 1066, the conquest of England by William the Conqueror, better known to his friends and neighbors as William the Bastard.
I'm sure they said it to his face all the time.
Yeah, you didn't. You didn't do that. But William of Normandy claims, and it seems the history does seem to back up his claim, that he was promised the crown of England, and that caused a real problem when William didn't get the crown. Harold Godwinson took the crown. There was no heir to the king of England. England at this time is Anglo-Saxon.
Okay.
They speak, well, a form of English, a very Germanic English. William, of course, speaks French. He's from Normandy, which is across the channel. William was so upset by not being given the crown as he had been promised by the old king that he decided he was going to go take that crown. So that's the story, and we all know the Norman conquest of England led by William the Conqueror. It took about 5 years for him to actually do this, and the battle, I guess, is probably where we talk about
the change,
and that's always the tipping
start
point.
of the change is actually what it is. It's
right.
It's what ignites the change.
And we've always said a Battle of Hastings.
Yeah.
The Battle of Hastings, and many people even say that the tipping point at the Battle of Hastings was a single arrow that pierced Harold's eye that caused him to fall. And once he was done,
that's it.
His army kind of just fell apart.
Yes.
And it's a long battle. It was and we can get it. We're not going to get into the whole battle specifics.
No, you're not.
But one of the things that I think is really interesting is the entire incident is still a tipping point for England, because the entire structure of England from top to bottom was kind of turned on its ear.
So they were already in a bit of chaos, because you're always going to have that chaos.
Well, there was an Anglo-Saxon elite, and they're going to be completely replaced by Normans, all French speakers.
Okay.
The ruling apparatus had been spread out amongst several leaders in England. William doesn't like that. He's going to reduce the number of people in ruling positions and centralize his power far tighter.
Okay, well, probably a good restructuring. Probably needed to be done.
He also restructured the church. He replaced all of the Anglo-Saxon bishops with French Norman bishops. Now, their practice of Christianity was different.
Yeah.
It was a more, well, for want of a better word, warlike Christianity.
A little militant?
A little more militant.
Okay.
Right.
Like Jesuits?
And the centers of church power in England were in the countryside. William moves them to the urban centers. And also began the building of castles.
So bringing everything in.
Correct. Centralizing everything.
It. Yeah, all right.
Started building Mott and Bailey castles all over England.
So what's the...
And we get feudalism.
Yes.
He brings feudalism to England, which had a loose form of feudalism, but it was not the tight European style of feudalism with the manorial system and everything else.
So it's an improvement.
It is an improvement, and it is a major tipping point, because the legal system of England, the religion of England, the language of England all rapidly change because of this invasion by William the Conqueror.
I would say it was his actions that really caused that change, though, because had he just come in and continued status quo, or just been a bad ruler and not did the things he did, those are what the power was.
Right. But there's a tipping point that people often ignore, and I think this is the fun part of this. When William finally got wind that allowed him to sail across the channel and get to England, and they finally get to England, as people will, they're all wondering, well, I wonder how this is going to go. I wonder what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. William burned the ships.
Oh, so they couldn't go.
You ain't leaving.
Well, see, again, it's his decision making.
But he's the instigator of the tipping point.
He's the fulcrum that moves everything.
Correct. He is the guy. He's the guy that makes this happen. But this tipping point has long-reaching effects for, well, hundreds and hundreds of years. None of the later kings of England would have been kings if William hadn't have done this. The entire history of England was changed because of this one thing, which was, I want that crown.
Him winning that battle.
And him winning the battle because of an archer and a lone arrow. But
divine intervention.
But
maybe.
But we also get, we get a lot of good things out of this, though. Tipping points don't have to be bad.
Oh, absolutely not.
And we get the Domesday, basically the audit of the entire English countryside.
What do I have now?
Everything.
What do I own? But see, that really shows you the kind of thinker he was and the kind of manager he was.
Well, and wanting to know exactly what he owned. Because that was the other thing. In England prior to William, the land was owned by many people. Mm-hmm. But in William's mind, the king owns all
everything.
The land. And you give it out as favors to your most loyal subjects, your warriors.
Of course. That's how the system works. That's how it goes.
Not anymore.
So, because, now we're like moving into, the fourth revolution in, of societies.
Of revolutions, you mean like agricultural revolution?
Well, going from hunter-gatherer to agricultural.
Well, I think they're saying we're in the third industrial age.
We are. We're in the third right now. It started in 1969. Nuclear power, microelectronics, space, biotechnology, all of the convergence of information, the rise of the internet. But now, aren't we moving into something else?
It might be so. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. What was your second? You had a second.
I did. And now this is still the history, but we're going to move way forward.
Well, if people don't want to hear history, then they can fast forward or they can
go listen to a murder podcast, I guess.
Sure. That's always being replenished.
Oh, yeah. There's plenty of them.
History's always happening too,
murder.
I guess.
It's a growth industry.
It is.
It has to do with the Civil War.
All right.
If you ask somebody,
always
hey,
with
what's
the Southern thing?
What's the tipping point that helped bring about the Civil War? And most people will go, well, it was the attack on Fort Sumter, and after that, the Civil War took off. Yeah, well, see, Fort Sumter may have been just part of the results of a tipping point.
Oh,
and
we talked about this the other day, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But the tipping point for the Civil War may have happened well before the Civil War. And it has to do with something that occurred before the Civil War. In fact, 20 years before the Civil War, more or less, 15. And it was the Mexican-American War. The Mexican-American War, which was happening in the 1840s, we had a problem. And the problem was during the Mexican-American War, President Polk in 1846 proposed this crazy idea that we would allocate money to purchase any territory from Mexico as war reparations. So in other words, since we kind of started the war, the idea was we're going to take your land, but we're going to pay you for it. We're not paying you what it's worth.
It's not going to give you market value, but we're going to give you something.
But we're going to give you money.
Shut up and be happy.
Right. It is well known that Polk engaged in the war with Mexico specifically to gain territory.
He saw some land, he wanted it, and he went after it. Okay.
But with him saying, hey, we'll pay you for the land we're taking, he's pretty much admitting that that's the whole reason he did it,
Polk
right?
the Conqueror.
Polk the Conqueror. That's right. So they tried to get the bill passed really quickly, and it didn't pass. And the reason was because of a guy named David Wilmot.
All right. What was David's issue?
David Wilmot had just a few minutes to talk about the bill, and he proposed an amendment that as an express and fundamental condition to the acquisition of any territory from the Republic of Mexico, that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall ever exist in any part of said territory.
Okay, so no slavery.
He wants no slavery in
So it's
the
a
new
free.
states.
It's a free state.
But you
They're
gotta
all
think-
free states.
Think about where the states are. We're talking about a good chunk of Texas. We're talking about New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California.
All right.
All of those areas are south of the line that was created under the Missouri Compromise, and later will be even more created under the Compromise 1850. But that doesn't really matter. The point is that there was already an agreement that anything south of this line, which was
would be slave states,
right?
So we could keep a balance, because balance is important unless you're talking slavery.
Yeah.
And
this became known as the Wilmot Proviso.
Okay.
Well, the Wilmot Proviso may very well be the tipping
point. Yeah, because you just gave them how many states?
Well, because and not only that, but at the moment he did it, this is when all of the discussion of slavery was really starting to reach a boiling point. But because of how he did it, jumping on Polk's bill and attaching an amendment.
He's piggybacking, yeah.
Yes. Democrats were split between Northern and Southern Democrats over this proposal.
Oh, sure.
Before, Democrats in the North would always align themselves with Southern Democrats and that gave them power, gave the Southern Democrats actual political power, even though they didn't have the numbers.
The numbers, yes.
And because of this would have been viewed by the South as trying to subjugate Southern interests for Northern interests.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to make sure that slavery could expand, so they didn't lose their membership or their numbers in Congress, their numbers in the Senate.
A lot rode on it.
This. And so they attempted to try to fix this, and it passed in the House.
All right.
The Wilmot Proviso passed in the House. But the Senate, which was controlled by the South, would not.
No.
In fact, they didn't even let it come to a vote at first. But the problem was this put in the heads of Americans, both North and South, that it was clear that they were going to try to stop any expansion of slavery from anywhere other than where it already existed.
Yeah, it wasn't going to go any further.
And it's not a big leap to say, well, if they're willing to do that, then they're also willing to take away slavery.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it opened the possibility up.
And the folks in the South who benefited from slavery, which were the rich and elite, regular people did not benefit from slavery because they were poor.
Yeah,
and your labor is not going to be worth anything as long as you've got slaves doing the work.
Yeah, doing the work.
So that was a whole different.
So that changed economics.
Well, again, yeah, it would change economics, but it changed the discussion of slavery from a political and party issue to a regional issue.
Mm-hmm.
It made slavery an issue of geography
more so
than party. And it allowed the split of the Democratic Party in such a way that by the time we get to the 1860 election, the Democratic Party actually has two different candidates, a Southern Democrat and a Northern Democrat. And so that allows Lincoln to win.
Yeah, because they split on their end.
And, of course, we all know what happened then. The South seceded from the Union, and eventually it all went to crap.
It all went to the theater. They all went to the theater.
And eventually somebody asked Mrs. Lincoln, other than that, how was the play?
You had to do that.
Yeah, I did.
Why?
Because I love that joke. I still think it's hilarious.
It's sad is what it is. Poor Lincoln's wife.
Yeah, she was crazy.
Yeah, she was
a
actually.
loon.
Yeah. All right. Well, we don't need to go to Mary Todd. Let's let that poor lady lay.
Well, the abolition movement had not moved at all. The abolitionists barely existed in the 1840s, but because of this fight, it galvanized people in the North.
It changed the discussion in people's minds socially, and then it opened it up. And well, That happens in society. It was a tipping point. Yes.
Yeah, but in history, we always talk about like the Civil War. We don't really bring up the Wilmot Proviso much.
No, it's true.
But it was a small event that created huge ramifications for the next 15 years that eventually led, well, to the Civil War.
Yeah. It just all came to a breaking point, and they couldn't. That was it.
Because most people
set them on a path.
Most people picked the election of Lincoln. That's the moment.
Yeah, but it wasn't that election. It must have
Lincoln probably couldn't have won if not for the Wilmot Proviso causing all of the trouble that it did in splitting the Democrats.
Because everybody would have been firmly entrenched in their ideas.
I mean, Lincoln didn't win the popular vote. I mean, he didn't win a majority. And
all right. So that's interesting. Yes.
So there you go. That's a tipping point, a more recent history.
More recent. Well, I guess in the grand
1066 to 1800.
You moved it up some.
I moved it up some, 800 years or so.
All right. So do you want to discuss the word tipping point itself and how society has come to use it? I mean, we always like to talk about the language and
Go ahead.
Or do you want to talk about the World Wide Web? And
well, that certainly the World Wide Web is probably why we discuss the tipping point even more, or
why it's come back into favor,
right?
Like because when I first read the book, not long after it came out, because I was working at the airline and I found it in the back of somebody's seat.
When you were cleaning the airplane.
When I was cleaning the airplane after the last flight came in.
Yeah, I remember you bringing it home and reading it.
Yeah, it was really very interesting. And how many times we referenced it over the years anyway. So I think it was like 2000.
Well, it built Malcolm Gladwell's career. I mean, it really did.
Yeah.
It caught fire.
Well, I like the way he looks at things
the book,
and brings it down
was
to
a tipping point in his career.
Yes. We have them in our lives. We have them in society. We have them in the world. I mean, the planet even goes through them. Good Lord, climate tipping points. You can't research tipping points without wading through
we'll get to those at the very end.
All right. So the word itself first came into usage in public writings, mostly in newspaper stories. There's one reference in 1894 from the Santa Cruz Daily Sentinel, and there's one from 1902 from Rockford, Illinois newspaper, and both of them in references to cars. Another lift raised the car almost to the tipping point when the chief discovered the ruse and galloped amidst the strikers, who quickly scattered. So I assume it was some sort of riot in the streets of striking people, workers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't get anything more out of context for that. I just get like this little paragraph. The other one had to do with a car also being toppled over without a moment's warning. So it's interesting that, 1894 and 1902, they're talking about it literally, right? The tipping point when gravity shifts and you lose it and you can't, not metaphorically like, the tipping point in a marriage where, those stories where the old man or the old woman, offs the other one and they're like in their 90s, there was just a tipping point there.
There had to be.
Somebody said, that's it. I'm done.
Done.
I can't take it no more. Anyway, so metaphoric tipping points and, literal. Then we jump forward in time to the 1950s and 60s where there's a huge ruckus going on in America.
What kind of ruckus?
A ruckus.
Could you describe the ruckus?
Yeah, it was a ruckus in the streets. Americans, yes. Americans were having another cultural shift in thought.
And when was this?
Well, the 1960s, the late 50s, 1960s. So the term then became widely used, the tipping point, however, not for a really good thing.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I had seen.
Yeah,
too.
Do you want to take that? Do you want to?
Well,
do you want to handle that one?
I can.
Well, so I assume it happened first in the real estate industry.
Again, for purposes of explaining what I'm about to say, remember, tipping point is defined as a critical point in a situation, process, or system.
Yep.
Beyond which a significant and often unstoppable effect or change will take place. And the phrase is attributed to Gladwell a lot. However, as you just pointed out, That's not
No, we've been using it.
right. And the tipping point really refers to a glass of water on the corner in one way or the other.
Yeah, where it's going to fall.
Right. So anyway, the fact is that the tipping point, the term, the phrase, the tipping point, it has some kind of dark connotations.
Oh, it's not that. Just do it. We were a different people then. We were a different country with a different mindset.
Okay. When tipping point first began to be employed in general use, it was almost entirely in reference to the propensity of white families to move out of an area when a certain percentage of the neighborhood was composed of black families. It served as a precursor of sorts to the phenomenon that is now known as white flight. Some white parents may reluctantly accept integration to the point of 10 to 15%. Exactly when the tipping point of white acceptance will be reached will depend upon the attitude of the individual white parents and upon the general white community attitude. That was from the New York Times in 1959.
Yeah.
The percentage of minority occupancy that initiates withdrawal of other tenants has been denominated as, quote, the tipping point.
So the law review here from the University of Pennsylvania, they make it to be like this is the definition of what it is.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
And under Michigan Law Review, 1960. Then at this tipping point, which varies considerably in different situations, the remaining whites tend to abandon an area quickly. And finally, this one from the Pittsburgh Courier, 1962.
This is, yeah.
And let me read it in my other voice. He was told that he was welcome in Village Creek, but not on Split Rock Road because his moving there would upset the delicate racial balance, since Negro occupancy had already reached the tipping point, which might turn Split Rock Road into a ghetto if another Negro family moved in. Can you imagine?
1962.
I'm sorry, we've reached our point. One more black family,
and
it's just going to turn into an urban ghetto. Well, there's no urban.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
it kind of, I guess it kind of went out of favor then, and now we've come to generalize the term again. Maybe we've let that definition lapse.
What I think is funny is it says in the dictionary, it says tipping point is what is referred to as an open compound noun.
Yeah, I know. I went down and read all that too.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting that we now have the ability to use other terms that, boiling point, the breaking point, the flash point. All of those mean the same thing.
Yeah,
they do, because the boiling point, the moment you hit it, water bubbles, right?
Yeah.
Flashpoint.
It changes. Unstoppable change.
Unstoppable change.
It's reached critical mass.
But there were people who got upset about the name of the book, Tipping Point. I mean, there were people.
I don't remember all that.
Well, no, this has been more recent that they're upset about it. They don't like the idea that the term was used for. Oh,
for
for the book. Like he could have used something else. Well,
so
who
it's
cares?
almost city planning.
Yeah, I don't know.
City planning and the
but think about this.
Real estate agents, those would be the two that it would affect the most.
Well, think about in the book Tipping Point, Gladwell talks about New York crime.
Yeah.
And he talks about how it skyrocketed in the 60s and 70s, and then in the 90s began coming down. And he said
they actually brought it back.
And he talked about why that happened. And it was the broken window theory primarily, which was they began to concentrate on small crimes because that's where big crimes come from.
The idea is that if you in a neighborhood let a house become in disrepair and broken
then
windows,
other houses around
then everybody sees that the element sees that you don't take care of it. There's no maintenance here.
Right. But here's my question.
So then it puts the neighborhood into chaos. It throws you into a state of constant,
But the question that I have is crime in New York did go way, way down, but now it's on the rise again.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we have a big push to ignore low-level criminality. So was Malcolm Gladwell 100% correct that you have to deal with the small crimes to prevent the big crimes?
Isn't that what you think as a parent? Isn't that how we raise the kids?
it's looking like
You look at you stop the small stuff so it doesn't become the big stuff, because when they get to be 12, 13, you're screwed.
But we have a nation
So
of
you got to take it when they're little.
Yeah.
You got to be hard on them for,
Yeah. Well, we got a nation of attorney generals, though, that think that the way to do
smack them on the wrist
is slap them on the wrist. And in perfect example, local example, very recent, we had a hit and run that cost the life of a child.
Oh, yes.
We also had a bust on I-10 of a man driving from California with a ridiculous amount of weed in his car.
He did.
But here's the thing. The guy who killed someone and had a suspended license, by the way, his bail was $85,000. The man who was driving with weed, $375,000.
And it was legal where he came from.
Right. And what does that tell you then about
which is valued the most?
Clearly the law looks at the weed as being somehow worse than the death of a child. And if that's the case, then we've reached a tipping point in the wrong direction.
In our judicial system.
Right.
In our criminal system.
Yeah. So,
Well, talking about that, and a massive disruption is always followed by these tipping points, right? As like when we move from one revolution to the next, as we are now moving into it more automated.
Sure.
Technological, automated
robots.
Yeah. Okay. So AI, becoming part of it ourselves,
The Borg were being assimilated.
Yes, absolutely. So what happens during that transition time, right? A massive disruption has always been after the shift when you have to move from one thing to the next. To take us from oil dependency to electricity dependency, or whatever they're going to use, solar, whatever the hell we're going to be doing in 25 years.
Oh, they better get going.
Well, but we're in the chaos that has to happen during that time.
Because usually it used to be that tipping points, when you recognize them, they were sort of organic. They happened.
Yeah, you can see it occurring.
And now we've got people who are setting positions that will cause a tipping point of one kind or another.
Constantly, because there's so much interaction globally of people.
And social media is part of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Because any idea can spread virally now.
That's it, exactly, to critical mass, and it's unstoppable.
In a hurry. And it takes literally no time at all.
Well, our memes are perfect examples of that.
Well, think about that woman that got on the plane in England to go to South Africa, and she made a joke while on the plane. Hope I don't get AIDS. And by the time she landed, in South Africa, she was hated worldwide.
The whole world hated her.
Talk about a tipping point.
You've been canceled.
Boy, there's a tweet you wish you could take back, right?
That's so sad.
Well, I wonder how Twitter should do that. They should put
because we all have
a 30-minute window before it publishes.
What, are you sure you want this? Yeah, but she would have turned.
Sure, you don't want to take this back.
She would have turned her phone off anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. It would have gone out. It absolutely would have gone out.
All right, and so finally, the tipping point thing. It was COVID and climate that both got us really on this. And have we reached the tipping point of the COVID epidemic? And what I mean by tipping point is not how many people will get sick.
Yeah,
that number is still ridiculously high. But here's the weird thing. Countries are basically just
and nothing's changing. They've stopped everything.
They're giving up.
The numbers.
Britain got rid of masks. They got rid of all the things that go against it to fight COVID, and they're just like, well, you're on your own.
You think society mentally just said that's it?
We can't do it anymore.
But there'll always be a faction.
Well, there is a faction. It's the vaccine versus anti-vaccine.
Yeah, so it's given us another division.
Think about how hard the government worked to convince people that this untried and unproven vaccine, and people can already I can hear it now. He must be an anti-vaxxer. No, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I just know in the history of vaccines that we usually spend a little more time making sure they're safe.
But you know what? We eat the chemical-laden food. We breathe the air.
Course.
We drink the water.
Yeah, if you're willing to eat a Twinkie, the vaccine probably be okay.
I'm sure that's a meme, isn't it?
It might be.
Probably.
It's a Twinkie this big.
It feels like something I've read. Okay.
But have we reached that tipping point with COVID? Are we all just ready now to say, well,
Or is
We're
everybody?
going to accept the number of deaths.
I think
and we're just going to go on with our lives.
we're all just kind of waiting for the next one.
Oh, the next one?
You know, even if we kind of settle into a whatever.
Like they hit us with the stealth Omicron.
Well, that something else comes along, yeah. But that we're forever. I mean, we've been jaded. Like me locking the door because that guy showed up yesterday. Well, COVID showed up, and we're ready to not to open the door ever again.
That's it. No, I'll still open my door. Well, it depends on what time it is, and it depends on how I'm dressed, and it depends on who's at the door.
I'll open the door with my shotgun.
And then the other tipping point that we hear all the time now to wrap this up, because we're going to wrap this up.
Are you going to wrap this up? What about you? What? All right, do it.
What?
I was just going to say, what about people's personal tipping points in their lives where their life changes rapidly and it's unstoppable?
Well,
because that happens in people's lives too.
Example.
You make one bad decision,
Yeah.
and it results in altering your life.
You neglect to take that special pill, and 9 months later, tipping point.
Well, you got to not take it for more than one night.
Well, I realize that. Okay,
unless you're on antibiotics, and then you might be screwed in more ways than one.
Speaking of that, I saw a meme today. It's a lady standing next to her children, and they're all numbered, and it goes from 10 all the way down to 1, and 1 is over her belly.
Okay.
So that many kids.
Yeah.
And all it said underneath was this: the husband couldn't pull out of the driveway.
Oh.
There you go. Tipping point.
Why did you have to share that?
That was hilarious.
You laughed and laughed and laughed. Okay.
No, here's the thing. When we were researching tipping point, there's some good stuff, but I will tell you that the number one thing that is associated with the tipping point now, when you go to do research, is climate.
Yes.
It is nothing but climate. It's hard. If you type in tipping point in history, climate is the fourth choice.
Oh, yes.
I
ran into that as well.
So, one, that's people trying to convince us about the tipping point.
That's Google pushing it?
No, I think Google just simply follows the trend. I don't think Google's pushing anything.
I don't know. Google pushes things at me all the time.
But I don't think it's doing that. I think that
an ideology. You don't think Google has a platform, a mindset,
their ideology
dogma
is to run the world.
Well,
I mean,
so then why wouldn't they be pushing that agenda?
Well, I'm not saying that they're pushing that agenda. What I'm saying is I think Google search results most of the time are simply a result of
society.
What people are searching for.
Yes.
Because I think lots of people probably type in,
like today,
have we reached a tipping point yet?
You're looking at the story about the Anne Boleyn
good example.
show. As soon as you type the word was, the first thing that comes up was Anne Boleyn black?
Right.
So people are asking that
a new
question.
show coming on that's being labeled as history. However,
it says historic drama.
It says historic drama. Well, yes, historic drama.
Drama.
Well, it's fiction. That's what it is.
All right,
but basically, they've made in this, and this is an example, I guess, of an ideology sort of being pushed. I mean, I don't care, but
don't call it history.
Don't call it history. But anyway, so in the story, Anne Boleyn, the second wife of Henry VIII, who has a horrible accident and her head falls off with the help of a French swordsman. Well, that'll teach her not to have boys. Anyway, she's being played by a black woman in this new historical drama, and she also has a romantic kissing scene with Jane Seymour, who was Henry VIII's third wife.
So you're offended by all of it?
I'm not offended. That's probably the wrong word to say. But
you're bothered.
They are making the claim, the people who made the show are making the claim that the black woman who is playing Anne Boleyn, whose name I forget, it was simply the best actress for the part.
Okay.
And I say poppycock. There's no way.
That it was like with the zombie flick. Romero.
What's the old saying? Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
Yeah.
There's no way.
So you think they did it just for hipness?
They're doing it on purpose
for nowness.
Yeah, they want
to be woke.
They want to show how woke they are.
That's part of their okay. All right.
And again, don't care. not going to watch
It
it.
might be entertaining.
Don't care.
But
well,
you
like
just,
in the show Bridgerton,
you did care when
in
you
the show
read it.
Bridgerton, they made Queen Anne in
Yes.
England a black woman.
Okay.
However, there is some slight possibility that Queen Anne was in fact black or had part black.
So it was part of the
So that's
story.
fine. But this one is
It's a little over the top for you.
a little bit. Yeah.
All right.
A little bit.
Okay.
Especially since we have a zillion paintings of Anne Boleyn. And
Well, I guess I'm more well, no, I'm not. Okay, Google is out there to dispel these types of, because people were searching that.
anyway,
So somebody wanted to know. So that was some poor child that needed to know the real history and find out she wasn't. And
but
now
my point is
the knowledge is
Google
out there.
search results are often determined by how many people look up a particular
Yes,
thing.
obviously a lot of people.
That's why when we watched, what was it we just watched recently that was clearly fiction, and then the first thing on Google, when
was it true? Yeah.
and it was like, was this based on a true story? And it's like,
You don't remember, so it doesn't.
I don't remember it,
Yeah.
but I was shocked that was actually on there. It was like, what?
They had to ask that.
So in the climate tipping point issue, what you've got is a bunch of scientists and, well, other people who may or may not be scientists, who the heck knows, all claiming that they know what the tipping point will be. And these are tipping points caused at the moment. Basically, if we reach a certain temperature, this is what's going to happen. And they're all predicting their various tipping points.
Well, shouldn't it be the same?
Well,
Because the science is the same, right? They're all studying the same
we have
phenomenon.
several scientists. Number one is basically a shutdown of the Atlantic circulation system, that it will change completely,
The patterns.
which will affect weather tremendously on both sides of the ocean.
Yeah.
We have the second tipping point, most voted on, I guess. The second runner-up, the West Antarctic ice sheet will disintegrate. Well, we're starting to see that actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Pieces are calving off, Third, Amazon rainforest will die.
Well, that's been on the decline because
We're
of
burning it down.
deforestation and burning.
The West African monsoon shift is another one. The one that bothers me the most, and if we hit this one, all bets are off, and that is the permafrost melt, because what that will do is release incredible amounts of methane into the atmosphere. That's a tipping point that people are very afraid of, although it didn't make number one for some reason.
Yeah, you would think that would, because it's the air we breathe. We'd have to have some sort of apparatus and would not be able to just breathe the air.
There is twice as much carbon in permafrost as there is in the Earth's atmosphere. Also, methane. And methane traps greenhouse gases and raises temperatures much better than carbon does. So if the permafrost starts to melt, then we're in big trouble. And so that's a major tipping point there. I don't know, maybe burn it? set the permafrost on fire. I don't know.
That's all terrifying. We don't want to think about that.
We have the Greenland ice sheet melting, literally just coming apart and falling into the ocean. That would raise sea levels by 7 meters.
Translate.
21 feet-ish. 21 feet-ish. So apparently...
Well, anything after 15.
Currently, the melting of the Greenland ice sheet is accelerating and adding about 0.7 millimeters, so less than 1 millimeter to global sea levels each year.
Okay.
But hey, in 100 years, that's 100 millimeters is a reasonable amount of height.
Can we be done with these? I don't want to talk about them anymore.
I know, aren't they fun?
No, that's horrible.
But these are all predicted tipping points.
And I can't do anything about any of it.
Right.
Except my own little world. But it's the small things, right? So people could create a tipping point.
But that's the question, isn't it?
It is, but we'd all have to do it.
But everybody has to get involved.
Everybody.
And the number one thing I hear,
and we can't even agree on the color of a dress on the internet. I mean,
right.
No.
I continue to say it. If China and India aren't buying in, then nothing we do in the West is going to make a difference.
That's true.
We might be able to slow it down, but then again.
But wouldn't it be like you start it? If America did it, maybe, you know.
Well, how are we going to do it?
I have no.
I mean, GM says they're going to stop.
No damn clue.
GM says they're going to stop making gasoline-powered cars in 2030.
Yes, that would certainly cause a huge and rapid change and chaos.
But better question
But
is,
that's the point. We're in the chaos of the transition anyway, moving into the fourth industrial revolution. Right?
I think we're trying to create a change in society and how we live that our technology is not prepared to back up.
I think that is absolutely true, but everything is moving at such a rapid pace. I think people today think that they can make it happen at a rapid pace, as rapid as everything else around them. You know, fast food industry. Yeah, it's I mean, it's kind of cliche now, but
yeah,
you know.
Well,
it is what it is. They're used to everything happening quickly
and
immediately.
And we'll all be living in the world with unicorn rainbows.
Well, but that's it. The current buzz surrounding artificial intelligence, robotics, blockchain, and other exponential advances in science and technology drive speculations in areas, you know, like our jobless future, human-machine hybrids, space colonization, all, you know, just.
And yeah,
and they say we're coming to that, and because of that, we have a massive disruption. While these established sectors all either are eliminated and the new ones emerge. Right, we're transitioning like a butterfly.
You know what? All this stuff about climate's not going to matter anyway because we're gonna have a world war. So,
why did you have to go there, G-Long? Nobody needs that. We need.
All right,
we need balance.
Then let's talk about something.
You got a positive tipping point?
I do.
Oh, okay.
I do. The positive tipping point of our American political system.
Oh, you're being sarcastic. Hey. I can already hear it.
The question is, can we come back from where we are right now?
You can never go back.
I don't know.
You can never go back. How can we go back? You can't put it back in the box.
No, but can we ever get it back to where there is some way to compromise?
Oh, yeah, shut down the internet.
Between political parties in America.
We have to not have as
internet's
much.
not getting shut down. You can hang that.
We have to not
that is
have
a pipe dream.
Yeah, like did you know it was from CERN? Okay, April 30th, 1993, the World Wide Web was launched in the public domain.
There's a tipping
that was
point
my tipping
right
point that we never did because, you know, history.
Speaking of.
Yes, but you know that CERN was responsible for that. So the scientist Tim Berners-Lee released the source code for the world's first web browser and editor, originally called Mesh.
They also created the first practical touchscreen so they could operate their super collider.
Because they wanted to have the super collider. They wanted to connect with others around the world in other, you know.
It was to share scientific information.
But they let it go free.
And naked pictures.
Because you have to have balance, and you don't get science without naked pictures.
I want to know when the first naked picture was sent on the internet.
Probably pretty quickly.
I'll bet it was one of
some of those little CERN boys.
They probably drew it with like characters, you know, something.
Yeah. They were making little obscene jokes with zeros and ones.
Absolutely.
All right,
we're thinking like we did with calculator.
We're thinking the worst of people. Stop it.
58008 spells boobs.
Yes. And you can do hello and yes.
Yeah, but boobs.
I know. All right, that's sad but true.
Well, I guess we kind of need to wrap this up.
All right, so because I think CERN would be a good place to leave it, and just let people know. Look for your own tipping points in your life.
Be aware.
Yeah,
every decision could be
exactly
a tipping point.
That got us back here.
Yeah.
The idea of film photography versus digital photography, and they didn't change. Olin Mills stayed the same, and we said we got to get out of Dodge.
We recognized that tipping. We did actually recognize that tipping
we recognized, this is not going to be good because it's going to go digital.
Yeah,
There's no way.
This company just spent every penny it had on film cameras when digital cameras were on the
brink. Yeah. So
that was sad.
Any fool could read a photography magazine article and
by the
know
way,
it was going to happen.
Textbook makers.
So that brought us back to the boot. Yeah. All right. What about it?
Textbook makers. You might want to stop printing textbooks because they're not going to be around much longer.
Yeah.
I really don't think. I think we proved that you don't need them. I mean, I love a textbook.
I like having a textbook. I
do
just
too.
had to print the entire first act of The Crucible.
But trying to get kids to actually read a textbook, oh my gosh. In fact, that may be a tipping point that we just haven't really recognized yet.
Oh, no, I have my own opinions about the education
reading?
tipping point. Well, about everything, about what COVID's done to education.
Well, we'll save that for another podcast. Has the COVID pandemic destroyed
It's had a mental mind shift,
the educational system?
Just like we talked about in those other two instances.
Yeah.
That culturally people have a different view.
Especially young people.
But as you say, for another time.
For another time.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Write it down. Make a note of it.
Make a note.
Let it be written and let it be done.
All right. Moses.
All right. Well, there you go. The tipping point. Man,
we appreciate you.
What did we solve today? Absolutely
nothing. Well, just people should be on the lookout.
Rest assured, we'll continue not solving anything.
Notice the patterns.
Yeah, just recognize the patterns.
Find your balance.
And don't forget the tipping point of a good meal in a restaurant. It's minimum 20%.
20%, people. 20%.
That's the tipping point.
Remember, joy is portable. Bring it with you.
That's right. Y'all have a great week and get ready for the cold weather this coming weekend. And I guess that's about it. longintheboot@gmail.com and 337-502-9011. And if you call the number and commit and actually dial the digits,
speak your piece.
Don't hang up.
Speak your piece.
Say what you're going to say. It's perfectly fine. And we'll be back in a couple weeks. Y'all take care. Be kind.
Long's out.
To each other. That's right. Long's out.